Welcome to VNT. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Let's start simple. A tariff is just a tax on goods coming into a country. Think of it as a fee that governments charge when products cross their borders. Whenever a foreign company wants to sell its goods in the US, for example, it might have to pay this extra cost, which is then added to the price you see in stores. It's kind of like a cover charge for imports, making foreign products more expensive so people are more likely to buy local alternatives. This can help domestic businesses compete, since their products might now seem like a better deal. But it also means you, as a shopper, could end up paying more for things that come from overseas. For decades, countries around the world worked to lower tariffs, making it easier and cheaper to trade. This helped build a global economy where you could buy almost anything from anywhere: electronics from Asia, clothes from Europe, or fruit from South America, all at competitive prices. But not everyone thought this was a good deal. Critics, including Donald Trump, argued that this system was unfair, claiming countries like China were undercutting American jobs with cheap subsidized goods, and that American workers were losing out. Their solution? Bring back tariffs, not just to protect American industries from foreign competition, but also to pressure other countries to play by new rules and negotiate better trade deals. For the US, tariffs can be used gently, as a way to nudge countries toward cooperation, or as a blunt tool to force change. The Trump administration chose the latter, imposing sweeping tariffs in an effort to shake up global trade and get other countries' attention. This wasn't just about tweaking a few taxes here and there. It was a dramatic shift in US trade policy, signaling a new, more confrontational approach to international commerce. The stage was set for a chaotic, high-stakes experiment, one with consequences for businesses, workers, and consumers everywhere, as the world watched to see what would happen next. In his second term, President Trump didn't hold back. He doubled down on his America First agenda, determined to reshape the global economic order in the United States' favor. He launched sweeping new tariffs on Canada, China, Mexico, and eventually, nearly every country that traded with the US, sending shockwaves through international markets and upending long-standing alliances. The administration cited a range of justifications, from fighting drug trafficking and protecting American jobs, to reducing the trade deficit, which had been a persistent concern for decades. But the effect was the same. A global trade war erupted, with headlines around the world warning of escalating tensions and economic fallout. The US tariff rate soared from 2% to over 17%, upending decades of painstakingly negotiated trade agreements and leaving businesses scrambling to adapt to the new reality. To make this sweeping change, the administration invoked the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, IEPA, a law originally intended for national security crises, not for rewriting the rules of global commerce. This unprecedented move raised serious constitutional questions about the limits of presidential power, sparking heated debates in Congress and the courts. The message from Washington was unmistakable. The old rules were out, replaced by a new era of economic unilateralism and aggressive negotiation tactics. The administration argued these bold steps were necessary to protect American interests, revive domestic manufacturing, and restore the nation's economic strength. They insisted that tough measures would force other nations to the negotiating table, where the US could demand fairer terms and greater respect for its economic priorities. But the world didn't stand still. Foreign governments responded with legal challenges, retaliatory tariffs, and their own protectionist measures, escalating the conflict. The result was a period of deep uncertainty, as global markets tumbled and investors worried about the future of international trade. Businesses and consumers across the country braced for impact, facing higher costs, disrupted supply chains, and an unpredictable trade landscape that shifted almost overnight. The era of friendly trade deals was over, replaced by high-stakes confrontation, uncertainty, and a new chapter in the story of global commerce. When tariffs hit, it's American importers who pay the tax, not foreign governments. Every product that enters the country, from cars to clothing, faces a new cost at the border. These extra charges ripple through the entire supply chain, starting at the docks and ending up in your local store. Most companies pass those costs to consumers, so prices rise on everything from electronics to groceries. Even everyday essentials, like milk, bread, and household goods, become more expensive. For families on tight budgets, these increases can mean tough choices at the checkout line. Businesses relying on global supply chains faced soaring costs, shrinking profits, and tough choices: raise prices, cut jobs, or delay investments. Small businesses in particular struggled to absorb the shock, sometimes forced to scale back operations or even close their doors. Some industries, like steel, saw short-term gains, but most of the economy felt the pinch. For every factory that benefited, many more businesses and workers faced new hurdles and uncertainty. The government collected record tariff revenue, over $213 billion by late 2025, but critics noted this was just a tax on Americans. While the Treasury's coffers grew, the average household felt the squeeze. Inflation ticked up, and uncertainty made it hard for businesses to plan or invest. Rising costs at the pump and in stores added to the pressure, making it difficult for families and entrepreneurs alike to look ahead with confidence. The tariffs weren't just policy, they were a daily reality, reshaping prices and paychecks across the country. Every trip to the store, every paycheck, and every business decision was touched by the trade war's effects. For many, the promise of protecting American jobs was overshadowed by higher costs and economic anxiety. The sense of security that tariffs were meant to provide often gave way to worry about the future. The trade war's impact was felt everywhere, from factory floors to supermarket aisles. No corner of the economy was left untouched, and the effects rippled through communities large and small. The question became, was the pain worth the promise? As Americans weighed the costs and benefits, the debate over tariffs and trade continued to shape the nation's economic future. Lawsuits quickly challenged the tariffs, arguing the president had overstepped. Only Congress can impose taxes. Critics said IEPA was for emergencies, not for rewriting trade law on a whim. Federal courts agreed, ruling the president's use of IEPA illegal. But appeals kept the tariffs in place as the case climbed the judicial ladder. By August 2025, a federal appeals court also ruled against the administration, but the tariffs stayed pending a Supreme Court review. The stakes were huge, not just about tariffs, but about the limits of presidential power. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, setting up a historic showdown. The central question, can a president use emergency powers to impose sweeping taxes without Congress? The answer would shape the balance of power for generations. The Supreme Court faced a dilemma: uphold the tariffs and expand presidential power, or strike them down and risk economic chaos. If they sided with the president, any future leader could declare an emergency and impose massive taxes, sidestepping Congress. But striking down the tariffs meant refunding billions and disrupting businesses that had adapted to the new rules. The justices had to weigh constitutional order against economic stability. Was it better to risk short-term financial pain or grant the presidency sweeping new authority? Their decision would define not just trade policy, but the very structure of American government. The stakes: destabilize the economy or destabilize the Constitution. The court's choice would echo for decades. The Supreme Court struck down the tariffs, ruling the president's use of IEPA was unconstitutional. The majority reaffirmed that only Congress can impose taxes and regulate trade. They said IEPA was for true emergencies, not a tool for massive economic policy shifts. The decision drew a clear line: emergency powers can't be used to bypass Congress. Dissenters warned the court was limiting presidential flexibility, but the majority held firm. The ruling was a landmark rebuke, prioritizing constitutional balance over short-term politics. The process of unwinding the tariffs began, but the real legacy was a powerful defense of separation of powers. The message: even in crisis, the Constitution comes first. With tariffs gone, prices on imported goods are expected to fall, though not overnight. Inflation should cool and your money will go a bit further. Businesses can plan and invest with more certainty, and the U.S. returns to a more stable trade environment. The government must refund billions, but the long-term economic outlook is positive. Most importantly, the ruling limits presidential power. Major economic changes must go through Congress. This decision is a major check on executive authority, shaping how future presidents govern. The era of aggressive unilateral tariffs is over. For consumers, relief is on the way. For the nation, it's a return to constitutional order and economic stability.